John, could he assure us that he is okay?
John.
Because he has to assure us if he has given, I mean, he has managed to sort it out.
I think he has managed to sort it out because I'm seeing people are now attending now. People are joining attendees. We have 6 people joining. People are joining in.
Okay.
Yes. John, can we start now?
You can start with people already in.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm glad to welcome you into this webinar. First of all, I would like to apologize for the little delays that we have experienced. I think there was some technical hitches that we experienced at the very last minute after doing all the technical preparations that we needed to do, and everything was running well. I apologize for that. This morning, under the African Council on Juvenile Justice, we have organized this webinar. And the topic of the webinar is to discuss about child-friendly justice systems. And we are trying to look at the intersection between mental health and juvenile justice system. With us, we are going to have panelists who are going to take us through this session. And one of the big questions we're asking ourselves, we people who are working within the juvenile justice, how well are we prepared? How well, what is it that we go through in and out as we go on doing the usual work of assisting our clients? At times, we think that mental health is just an area that probably does not concern us. Besides the people that we help and who needs our support, we also go through situations that are a bit difficult. And I believe that our panelists are going to take us through. We are to have 2 panelists, though one of the panelists got some last minute emergency, Wairimo Gidahu, who is not going to join us today, but we also had a guest panelist, and she's going to introduce herself. She's called Yvonne, but I believe that she's going to explain further whom she is. But our main panelist for today is Warenga Wagema, and this lady is a graduate professional in law and public health, and she has over 9 years of experience working in different companies and NGOs, and also working with vulnerable populations. In addition to this work, she is a founder and lead trainer and the CEO of the Center for Mental Health and Wellness in Kenya, and the creator of wellness curriculum for training and capacity building through comprehensive mental and emotional health education. Warenga is has a unique combination of skills and expertise in law, public health, teaching, training, personal life experience, and management that give her valuable edge in developing mental health curriculums and programs. When she is not working or studying, she loves to engage in all things that are related to art, design, creativity, writing, music, listening to podcasts, yoga, reading nonfiction, telling good stories with friends, and having a hearty laugh. And I think, ladies and gentlemen, during this webinar, I feel that we are in safe hands, in the hands of Warenga Wagema, who is now going to take us through this session on mental health and juvenile justice. Warenga, kindly welcome. And before that, probably before you come in, you might also need to bring on board Yvonne Gachaja to introduce herself to the panel, to the participants of this webinar today. Most welcome.
Thank you so much, and good morning to everybody. Before I start, seeing as I've already been introduced, I want to give Yvonne the opportunity to introduce herself, and also as I ask for just screen sharing permission as I'm uploading the deck.
Thank you, Waringa. As Washira said, my name is Yvonne Gashanja Gache. I have not heard that name Gashanja in a long time. For a minute, I was like, who is that? Anyway, so my name is Yvonne Gache. I am a counseling psychologist by training, but a critical psychologist by practice. Why critical psychologist? Not because I am critical of psychology, but because I believe that mental health issues or ill mental health needs to be explained at a deeper level than it is being currently done. Usually, right now in practice, what is common is that mental health distress or emotional distress is pathologized. And when we pathologize mental distress, what we do is we put an individual responsibility on a larger social issue. If somebody, for example, comes from low resource setting, say, for example, they are struggling with rent, they did not have anything to eat, they're not able to meet their basic needs, and this person is exhibiting symptoms of depression. Are they actually having a depressive episode, or are they having a normal reaction to an abnormal situation? For this reason, I have, over the course of time and practice, I have moved steadily from just counseling psychology to critical psychology, because I believe that mental health issues are a social justice issue. And I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. We have a lot of overlap in just generally how we view the mental health space. So as we begin, I'd like to thank you so much for creating time for this session. And before we start, I just want to confirm that you're being able to see my screen clearly. I don't know, somebody can tell me.
Yes, I can see from my head.
Okay. So that's really good. I also hope that you can be able to see me clearly and hear me clearly.
From my head, I confirm that.
Okay, thank you so much. So just a few housekeeping guidelines. So this webinar is being recorded, just for your information. It's good to know that it's being recorded for later use. So if you're in a position to have your video on, kindly put it on. Sometimes as a presenter on these online calls, talking to names and black boxes can get a little bit intimidating. So, to see a face, to see a reaction is really, yeah, it keeps the momentum going. Also, if you're not participating, kindly put your mic off. And if you'd like to participate, please use the reaction raise hand icon throughout the process. There is a point we'll do a Q&A, but what we're looking to do is to have a very participatory webinar. So throughout the process, if you'd like to participate, kindly raise your hand, and also please utilize the chat function as much as possible, because also the thing when it comes to mental health is that it's a conversation and it's an experience. It very rarely happens as a theoretical thing that now I'm the expert and then you're the recipients. No, we are all experts in this. And so the idea is just to shed light on some of the areas that you may not see. So over here, just to shed light on what you don't know that you don't know, that may be affecting how you're delivering your service. And finally, just relax, enjoy the webinar. It's 10:25 here in Nairobi, bright and early morning. And yeah, just relax, get water, drink tea, drink coffee, eat your breakfast. Yes, relax. That's the point. Sometimes I know that these mental health conversations, people come with a lot of intensity, like I don't know, like So I'm really hoping that by the time we've done, we've laughed, we've shared, and you've learned something. So what to expect throughout for the next 2 hours or so. You're going to learn the different definitions of mental health in terms of just the different terminologies that we use as mental health care workers. And so we will teach you in a very simple and digestible way. Also, we'll teach you how stigma and just show you how stigma may be affecting your work. So recognizing also just systemic workplace trauma and how that may be affecting your service delivery. We'll also take you through the stages of compassion fatigue and how it affects your capacity to work at your fullest potential. Then we'll talk about emotional intelligence, but here we'll show you how to do it as a practice, because I think all of these topics, are full webinars on their own, but we'll try as much as possible to do them justice in the time that we have. And finally, I will be teaching you a very practical breathing exercise. 2 hours is a long time to, just be seated. So the nature of our health breaks today will be breathing exercises. The point here, or rather just one breathing exercise, but the point here is by the time you leave, that you have a very practical wellness tool in your pocket. So you have a mix of theory, life experience, and then a wellness practice. And so throughout the deck, I will be prompting you. Also, the reason why I need us to breathe is because there's something in psychology known as activation, from the word active, activate. This is pretty much you came for a webinar, right now it's 10:27, and then Warenga says something, and you move from you being okay to you not being okay. I could trigger something just by, saying it. I could bring up some latent memory. I could take you to a place where really you are not expecting to go. And so part of what breathing will help you to do is to emotionally regulate yourself throughout this process. We cannot talk about mental health care in a passive way, and so for sure, I know things will come up. And so breathing will help you remain grounded, will help you remain present. And for anything that comes up, your breathing is going to help you emotionally regulate yourself. And hopefully, even while you're at work, you'll be using these tools, because the nature of the work that also I do and you do could be highly activating. And so I'd like to begin here. So talk to me on the chat box or raise your hand and let me know when you hear the word mental health, what comes to your mind? What do you think? What words, what adjectives, sentences, experiences come up for you when you hear the word mental and health together? No, this is the moment we begin to participate. So talk to me. Yvonne.
I think to me, it basically what comes into my mind is a state of mind or emotions that are unstable.
Okay.
Stress, kind of.
Mm-hmm. Someone else? Someone else? Just words. Also write on the chat function as well if you don't want to speak.
I think I'd like to give it a go. As a layman, when I hear the word mental health, I think of the brain. Yeah.
That's really good. Someone else, something else, kindly put a chat. Someone has chatted me. Let's see. Julian is saying mental health is about our well-being. Okay. One more, and then we jump to the definition. Come on, oh, sorry. Just one. I realize we might not all be Swahili speakers. One more. Okay, thank you for the people who have participated. So I like the words that have been used here: state of mind, emotional instability, stress, brain, well-being. Yes, all these things do constitute what's going on with us mentally. However, the thing that comes to surprise people is that the actual definition of mental health, this definition is from the World Health Organization, and it tends to have 4 main elements. So number 1 is realizing your potential or your purpose. So this is the lifelong question of who am I? When you are not a parent, a sibling, a spouse, somebody's worker or working for yourself, when you're not playing out all these roles, who are you? And that's a lifelong question. It can't be answered in a day. It's something that builds up on itself. But ideally, when you think about your mental health, you need to consistently be thinking about, am I realizing my potential? Am I setting myself up to be able to realize my potential? What is it that I'd like to do? Who am I? Who am I? Why am I on earth? And that's a really important question to answer, which then brings to the second element of what mental health is: coping with the normal stresses of life. Now, there's this idea and notion that we are all trying to chase a stress-free life. Let me just break it to you. There's no such thing as a stress-free life. Life is stressful. That's just the nature of life. Life is stressful. But the idea here, when you are seeking out mental health, is number 1, recognizing what are the things that stress me, or what are my daily day-to-day stressors. Name them, identify them, recognize the sources of your stressors. And then ask yourself, is this stress normal, right? So is it overwhelming me? Is it underwhelming me? Is it making me feel like I'm doing too much? Is it also occupying my thoughts, occupying my every day-to-day existence, that I'm unable to do anything else because of that thing that is stressing me? The idea here is, especially when you then pick up, we'll talk about it later on, but when you pick up self-care practices, what these practices are enabling you to do is to cope with just the normal stressors of your life, and to be able to identify when these stressors begin to become too much for you to handle on your own. So that at that point, you can bring in somebody you trust, you can bring in a professional to help you walk through that stress and find healthier ways to cope with it. But the idea here also is recognizing your normal stressors and coping with them and managing them. The third thing around mental health is working productively. Now, both of these words, work and productivity, are very, very subjective. There's things we've been told based on the communities that you've grown up in, the schooling systems, your family, what you have observed generally around when people talk about work, and then also talk about productivity. This is something that you need to define for yourself. So when you say I'm working, what is work? What is work? And then secondly, when I say that I'm working productively, what is productivity? Right? So if I use an example of myself, for me, working productively it all comes down to the quality, not the quantity. So if I do just one thing today and do it well, right? So if I just, the whole of today, although that's not my reality, but if just today all I did was this webinar and I execute it to a quality that I am happy with, then for me, I'm like, that was work well done, that was productive work. For some people, it could be quantity, the amount that you're pushing out. But remember, this is something that you need to define for yourself and also take responsibility for it. Because a lot of us tend to find ourselves in working situations. When I ask you, how did you find yourself here? Ujui, or sorry, you don't know, or you're doing it for the money, or you're doing it for whatever. So when you're burning out, when you're stressed and you're now burning out, and then I come back and ask you again, is this work productive? You can't really answer that question. And so really, you need to really sit with, what do I think is work? And when I say that I'm working productively, what am I doing? That way, when your work begins to be compromised, you can pick it up quickly and notice and be like, okay, I'm the kind of person who I produce 10 things in a day. Now I'm barely getting to 2. I'm barely doing 1. That needs to indicate to you that there's something that is going on. It's not necessarily indicating a mental illness, but it's giving you a signal that there's something you need to pay attention to. But the only way you can pay attention to it is if first of all, you even know what it is. You first of all defined it for yourself. And finally, contributing to community. A lot of us, again, when we hear the word contribution, money comes to mind. Not necessarily. Money is just one way that you can contribute to your community. So again, ask yourself, first of all, who is my community? What are the different spaces and people that I consider as my communities? And then when I'm talking about contributing to it, what is it that I'm doing? No man is an island. We are all, as human beings, we are social beings, and we are interdependent. We need each other to be able to survive and to keep the human ecosystem. And so if the things that you do, all the work that you do for your mental health has to have an element where it comes back to contributing to community. So even though you're doing a self-care practice, by you taking care of yourself, how then do you show up in community? And as a result, you are either a better person, you're adding on to and not taking away or expecting that it's everybody else's problem except yours. And so I'd like just continue to use the chat box. But for me, what I'm interested in is you reflecting back your understanding of what mental health is. I really like to start here because there's a very big conflation. People talk about mental health and mental illness like it's the same thing. And so then a lot of us, once you realize that this is the definition of mental health, then it sets you up to recognize that we are all on a journey of seeking a mentally healthy existence. That it's not the preserve of a few people. It is not that people who are then mentally ill are the ones who are supposed to be taking care of their mental health. No, as long as, again, I like the word Yvonne used, brain. As long as you have a brain, then it has the capacity to be overwhelmed. It has the capacity to get sick, just like any other part of your body. And so remember this. I think if there's one lesson that you need to take away from today, in fact, even we can end the webinar here, is that your mental health, that as long as you do not have to be sick, you do not have to have a mental illness to take care of your mental health, to be interested in who you are, to be interested in what your potential is, to observe and recognize and name what your stressors are, and then subsequently bring in tools to support you in your day-to-day, to work productively and be a contributing member to your family, to your community, to this country and the continent and the world. That you remember every day that the work that you do has ripple effects, even though I personally do not get to interact with your work. By you simply showing up to work, it has ripple effects throughout the globe, because you are an integral part of this universe. As long as you're existing and you're here, the 9+ billion of us, you're a part of this puzzle, you're an important part of this puzzle. And so doing the work that comes when it comes to keeping yourself mentally healthy is really, really important. Yeah. So up until there, maybe with a wave of hands, just reflect back to me what we are understanding before we continue. You can use the chat box, you can raise your hand. Yes, yes. Yes, Patrick. I think your mic is muted.
We'll switch it. Thank you. Sorry for that. What has caught my attention is the point where you have driven that one is able to pick the stressors and the sources of that which causes stress to me. That for me stands out because the moment I'm able to pick that, then probably I have a step or one step forward to begin knowing how to cope or how to manage that.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Anybody else? Yvonne, I'm interested in your contribution on your thoughts about what mental health is.
So I like the breakdown because it makes it gives it a whole new meaning. The only thing that I would probably contribute is on the second point, coping with the normal stresses of life, is that stress is not always a bad thing. There's eustress and distress. So if you're having eustress, it's positive stress, it's pushing you forward towards a certain goal. So it's not an entirely bad thing. When, however, you are in distress, then it's now where you need to maybe fall back on your support systems and dig into your coping mechanisms and things like that. But I really like the breakdown, and you really brought it home, even with the practicability of it. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So the next slide is on mental illness or mental ill health. So once again, tell me either through the chat function, when you hear the word mental illness, mental ill health, as a general mental health movement, we are moving away from the word mental disorder because it's highly stigmatized, and depending, it could come off as derogatory. So we are using the words mental ill health or mental illness. So when you hear that, what comes to your mind? Talk to me, talk to me. Imagine me, I can be silent also and stare at you guys. It's possible, it's possible. Okay, someone is on the chat box. Tell me, let me hear. Julian is saying something not right with your head. Okay. Someone else. Even a breakdown of sorts. Okay. Someone else. Any word, adjective. Jerusha, instability of mind. Okay, thank you so much. One more thing, one more thing. One more person. Thank you so much for that. So let me see, someone has chatted. Okay, 2 people. Mary, Proieto, kind of a mental dysfunctionality. Mary, not being able to cope with the normal stresses as you always do. Yes, inability to respond reasonably to situations. I agree, I agree. Okay, thank you so much for this. At least there's, again, I need you to recognize that it's definitely not the same thing as mental health. It's two very different definitions. And so generally, what mental ill health is or what mental illnesses are, these are health conditions. So in the practice, there's something known as the Diagnostic Statistical Manual. We are currently in the 5th version. So it breaks down all the different variations of health conditions that involve changes in your emotion, in your thinking, in your behavior, or a combination of these three, right? So for purposes of this webinar, we won't go too deeply into the DSM, but the idea here is, again, that you cannot diagnose yourself. You know, I recognize Dr. Google may be an effective doctor, but by the time you come to the conclusion that you have a mental illness, you need to have seen a doctor. In the mental health world, they're known as psychiatrists, right? The process of also seeing them is at first you need to meet Yvonne, who's a psychologist. You talk, depending on the level of severity, because there are some people who medical intervention is required first and then talk therapy. But depending on just where you're at, first of all, you meet a psychologist. You have a few sessions, 2 or 3 sessions. The psychologist then will help you determine, do you then need to go see a psychiatrist? And then they refer you with also a proper now breakdown of your history of what has been coming up in the sessions and why they think that it's necessary for you to also be on medication as you're continuing with talk therapy, right? So that's just a fun fact, if you could put it like that, because very many people don't know that. And so again, mental ill health will show up. Remember, this has to be a raised level of awareness. So first of all, who am I? Realizing your potential. What are my stressors? When I'm working productively, what does that mean for me? And when I'm contributing to community, what does that mean? Now, you'll be able to start to tell, if, for example, if you look at the graphic here on the left, you're having trouble concentrating, your anger, you're unable to regulate your anger, you spark really quickly or you withdraw when you feel angry. Feeling paranoid. Paranoia here, again, is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just your perception of what is going on is in terms of the relative reality, right? So again, you see also reality is very subjective depending, but sometimes like if you're feeling paranoid, if you're feeling like you're not really trusting yourself all the way, feeling extremities in mood changes, and your mood is swaying a lot, suicidal thinking or suicidal ideation. Again here, suicide exists as a spectrum. There are stages to it. It actually does build up. A lot of us tend to see it in the last two stages of either attempt of suicide or now you've actually died by suicide. But there are three other stages that come before that. And so, and that the thinking, the ideating, the wishing that you are not here, wishing you don't wake up, even sometimes just wishing the world ends, you know, just so that life just ends also. Feeling excessive fear and worry. So fear, worries and fears are also normal, really, as part of adaptation and survival. Fear is a thing that keeps us alive. But Juvenile, I'll read your chart. But yeah, but when it becomes excessive here meaning that it's taking over your capacity to work, to be a family member, to be productive, like you're just always worried, paralyzed by fear, you're unable to make any moves because you're just so afraid, then that needs to raise an alarm. Again, your inability to cope with stress or stressors, here feeling like it's just everything is too much. You're overwhelmed by just pretty much the things that stress you in your life. And then excessive use of alcohol or drugs, so a dependency there to manage yourself. Again, there's such a high stigma attached to alcohol and drugs, but when you again look at it from the point of a coping mechanism, it may be a maladaptive coping mechanism, but this person is trying to cope anyway, right? So as opposed to chastising people who are addicted, we need to ask ourselves, what could this person be trying to cope from? Humanize it, as opposed to pushing people in a corner called you're a drug addict and somehow you're lesser than the rest of us in society. The idea is to ask, what is this person trying to cope from? What are their stressors? And whatever drugs and substances, and even here sometimes we forget behavior as and actually societally accepted behavior could become addictive. So here we're talking about things like food, exercise, sex, gambling, video gaming, your phone, social media. So these are behaviors that in the larger scheme of things really are societally accepted behaviors. But are you using this behavior to cope? Are you dependent on it? Do you feel like if I don't do this thing, then my whole world is going to fall apart? And so that's part of when you're then looking at yourself in terms of then the symptoms. And that's why I'm saying you cannot diagnose yourself, because a lot of the times we will see all these symptoms, then we'll go on Google or we'll read a caption or a post on social media and it says this is anxiety. Then you attach an identity of yourself. You're like, I'm an anxious person. But then what I've noticed is that especially you're not making any further move to get yourself to a place of wellness. And so tafadhali, by the time we are done here, there's a reason why the professionals exist. So I agree that sometimes it may not be accessible or so visible. That one is, as a profession, we will continue to, visibilize ourselves. But the idea here is before you come to a conclusion that you have any mental illness, if you need to be in front of a doctor. The same thing with physical health. By the time you come to any conclusion that your body is physically ailing, yes, sometimes we can, pick it up and be like, okay, this is whatever, I have a cold, I can do a home remedy, or I'm feeling pain here. You can listen to yourself a little bit, but a lot of the times, by the time you then come to a conclusion, your stomach could be paining, but by the time you've come to a conclusion that you have ulcers or irritable bowel syndrome or any other type of disease that Google is telling you have, or heck, even cancer, because you see, so Google is extreme. because what it uses, again, remember, this is an algorithm, this is tech. It's learning based on what people are asking it, right? So it's not a subject, it's not objective. Again, Google is not sitting with you, observing your body language, checking your temperature, taking out your blood. There's so many things that Google is not doing, but it's also very good at telling you the conclusion. And so the process of getting to the point where you then decide that you have a mental illness, you have to be in front of professionals, and these are psychologists and psychiatrists. Sawa sawa. Juvenile, I really hope I'm not butchering your name. Your contribution is mental health is of paramount importance for human beings in general, and we have to regulate all the things which contribute to its stability. I mean, can we end the webinar here? I mean, such a powerful takeaway. Thank you so much for that. And so we will not belabor this slide too much, because as we move, I now want to begin to show you some of the things that could be affecting how you're delivering your service from a mental health perspective. Because at the end of the day, your client is the child. But before you reach the child, there's things that are happening to you as the individual. And then there's also things that are happening systemically. So within that working system, right? And so I want us, before we jump into stigma, to take a health break. And like I told you earlier, our health breaks will constitute a breathing exercise. This is mainly because up until this point, I've said quite a number of things. I know activation may have already begun. You may really be wondering, hey, what is not happening in my life? Or what could be possibly happening in my life? I know also this is, for a lot of us, is, brand new information. And yeah, the knowledge process can be a little bit intimidating. Proieto, you're saying internet can not only mislead you, but also create more panic and stress. Fully. That even needs to be put on a billboard for sure. Because also remember that when you're going online, you're also coming with a bias filter. So even what you're asking Google already has bias, So like, so if you're suspecting that you could be dying, you will not ask Google, what are the signs that I am dying? You will ask Google, am I dying? And then Google will tell you whatever back, and then it just creates a lot more panic and a lot more stress. The problem is that, and then also remember this, we are children of the African continent. And if you then also think through the bias, when tech as a very biased system, ask yourself, me, when I'm Googling this, is my Kenyan experience being represented? Is my African experience being represented? Is my Blackness, my Africanness, is it represented in this answer? Ask yourself that. A little bit political, this is a wild statement, a little bit radical that I'm just throwing it out there, but please remember that a lot of things are not made with us in mind. And so always ask yourself, as you're consuming content online, does this content have me in mind? Me being a Kenyan or being an African, me in my Blackness, me in my cultural diversity, all those things come together. By the time then you're consuming a response, tafadhali think about that, because also tech is highly biased. That one you can quote me. There's studies and documentaries that have been done about that. So yeah, so I'd like us to move into like the breathing exercise. But before that, Yvonne, kindly can just add your voice on what you think mental ill health is or mental illness is.
Listening to somebody else who has beliefs like mine is rather refreshing and comforting that I am not alone.
Yeah.
And so what is ill mental health? Like you said, according to the DSM, it's all those things. But what I find that like the DSM doesn't put in place is like you said, is even the DSM culturally representative of us? Or did we just take westernized models that were created and came and implemented them as a whole? just copy pasted the entire thing and brought it to Africa. And we did not contextualize. We did not even ask about language. We did not look at our cultural practices. So in so doing, you'll find that in just adapting what is purely done in the West and just the Western biomedical model of mental health, you find that a lot of things are overlooked. Some of even our strengths are looked upon as weaknesses. Remember, psychiatry has not really been fair because there's a time that when a slave wanted, I forget the term, but Anwarinka, if you know, you can remind me, there was a mental illness classified for slaves who wanted to run away. Like runaway slaves were declared mentally ill. So in that way, you can see how psychiatry and psychiatric diagnosis, and especially the biomedical model, can then be used as a tool of oppression. Not to get into the radicalness that I see Waringa and I can get into. But just to say that it is important to notice when you feel that you're overwhelmed. One of the ways to actually know that you are starting to, like, imagine your life on a continuum, on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 being where you're most distressed and 1 being where you're at your best. When you start to feel like you're dipping towards even the 6 or the 7s, at that point, you need to know that you need to seek help. But how do you get to the 6 and how do you get to know that I am on this continuum called life? I'm at number 6. I'm at number 7. I feel like my resources are being depleted and things like that. How do you get to know that? By allowing yourself to feel. Very many times we run away from our feelings and our emotions. You ask somebody, how do you feel? I'm okay, I'm good, I'm good. Especially, there are some who say good twice. Those ones are the ones I'm most suspicious of. I'm good, those ones. So I'm like, okay, so you're not good. So what's the second good for? And it starts a conversation. But we don't allow ourselves to feel. And that's why we start to need the numbing. So the numbing comes in form of the alcohol, the substances, work. There are things that you did not mention, Waringa, like overachievers, overworkers, people who cannot stop working. Me, I'm on the grind, I'm chasing this paper, I'm chasing the bag. No, you're not. You're running away from emotions. So what is so scary? What is this that you don't want to feel that makes you constantly be on the grind? And being on the grind helps you to run away from it. And you will be on the grind, but that emotion, you need to know it and name it. And when you know it and you name it, and then you can say it, it takes away the shame. And shame is one of the biggest emotions that humans are constantly running away from. So, yeah, I feel like I've gone all over the place.
No, necessary, very necessary. I thank you so much for that contribution. So yeah, before we jump into stigma, I'd like us to first of all just, do a breathing exercise. So like I told you earlier, your breathing is number 1, it comes down to access. What is the one thing that you can access anytime, anywhere you go, regardless of the circumstance? Your breathing. Breathing is an indicator of life. And so as long as you're alive, then your breath is a very, very, very powerful tool that you can use to regulate yourself, to calm down, to get clarity, especially in that moment when you're feeling overwhelmed by work. And then as the day goes on, you can then pick up your other self-care practices that will require you, to probably move from point A to B, or will require you to, get on your phone. Let me see, somebody is talking to me. Oh, Nemo is here. Yes. Thank you, Nemo. We're happy that you're here. Juvenile, thank you, Arenga and Yvonne, for your insights and inputs on mental health. It's really instructive and clear. Thank you so much for that affirmation, Asante. I really appreciate it. So I just want to at least give you a little bit of the theory before we get into the practice. So a lot of us, if you go back to the days of the early man, we were hunters and gatherers. And so that meant that at any given moment, you literally have to go out to the wilderness and look for your food, right? And so when you're either running after something or being chased by something, an animal or a creature for this matter, we would not know. We are not hunting and gathering. We would only imagine and pick up from the stories that have been given to us by our ancestors. What happens is when you're running or you're in trouble, you breathe from your nose and your chest. Yeah. And that sends a direct signal to your brain that you're in trouble. And so you're apprehensive. So a lot of us, even though we are not in the days of the early man and hunting and gathering, our world does still have that same structure. So probably we are hunting and gathering jobs. We are trying to hunt and gather relationships. We are trying to keep up with just technological advancements and all the things that it's doing to our lives. We are currently in a pandemic. So many things are happening. And so literally we forget to breathe. And so we are nasally breathing a lot from our nose only. And if you're gonna breathe maybe a little bit deeper, it's going into your chest. However, a breath that then constitutes relaxing and calming down is an abdominal breath. Breathing into your abdomen, your belly area, your stomach area. And when you breathe out, so what happens is when you breathe in deeply into your belly area, for those of us who in our biology schools were taught about the lungs and the diaphragm, if you remember, the diaphragm comes down and allows most air to come in. On top of that, it forces you to be present. If you're doing an abdominal breath, you literally have to slow everything down and think about it. But if you're just breathing the one which is automated for you to breathe, you're just doing your thing as you're going along. So that's why it's important. Number two, as I'm taking you through this breathing exercise, I will talk you through your senses. So your 5 senses. Again, your senses don't need any sort of feelings to be happy. You can imagine if you had to be happy to taste something or to see, again here, noting ableism in all of its forms. Like for people who cannot be able to see. So again, please put a strong star there for ableism. Can you imagine again, if you had to be full to hear? Again, the body is a very intelligent organ. Don't ever look down upon your body. It's very, very intelligent. There are things it does for us when we are not thinking about it, but those things are what keep us alive. And our senses are a very powerful way that you can tune into your body without any, you could say, emotional interference, right? Without, again, when you're then thinking about your body from your senses, it quiets your thinking mind. Our thinking minds are always alive, are always activated. Right now, our thinking minds are going on and on and on. You're probably looking at me, you're wondering where I am, why I sound like this. You know why, what chain yake ni kwa nini, sorry, where's her chain looking like that? Her voice though, very husky, very deep. Why does she sound like that? I know. We are thinkers, and our thinking minds are consistently trying to analyze everything that's going on around us. And so when you tune into your senses, into your body, through using your senses, it quiets your thinking mind. It allows you to tap into your emotional body, your feeling body, yeah? And that way then you calm down. And then finally, the technique I'll teach you, there are very, very many different types of breathing techniques. I'll refer you to a concept known as breath work, which you can research and look for afterwards as a wellness tool. But there are very many breathing techniques that can be used for a variation of reasons, from calming down to giving you energy, to, pacing your thoughts and yourself, and different practices. But what I want to teach you today is a very simple counting technique from 1 to 10 that you can be able to access as you're doing your work. And finally, I'll also introduce something known as visualization. So this is the idea that you take your mind and think about a specific thing. So every time your thinking mind is activated to sway, you come back to that thing in that moment so that you're able to tune into the benefits of the breathing. So over here, for the rest of the health breaks, we'll just breathe, but I wanted to first of all give you an explainer for you to at least understand and know what to expect. Then so that now when we actually do it in practice, it's not, again, your thinking mind, it will just come in and just be like, why this, why that, why? So you're not even in the breathing because you're analyzing and critiquing what is actually going on, right? So I'd like us in this moment to release, if you're writing anything, if you have your phone, if you're just release anything that you're holding, relax your shoulders. We'll begin with our sense of sight. So I want you to look around where you are, including the screen, including looking at me, and just note what you're seeing. If it's color, if it's objects, just be like color orange, bag, paper. Your thinking mind will be tempted to do, and I didn't even notice that thing was orange. And that orange, what shade of orange is it? That's your thinking mind that has come to work. So why I like to begin a sense of sight is because our eyes are very distracted and they pick up a lot of things. So just note the things in your environment that you're seeing. Note 2 to 3 things and then close your eyes. So I want us to check into our sense of hearing. What can you hear around you, including the sound of my voice? Note it. Just note, I'm hearing that. Don't analyze it, just note it. Come to your sense of smell. What are you smelling around you? Your sense of taste. What can you taste on your tongue? Your hands, what are your hands doing? What are they touching? Texture of your clothes, texture, what's the temperature of your hands? Then bring your attention to your feet. Feet on the ground, what's going on with your feet? What's the temperature of your feet? Have you worn shoes? How are your feet feeling? Are you stepping on the ground? Just think about that. Then I want you to visualize 2 things. So here you have 2 choices. You could either think about the thing that you really like to smell. Like when you smell it, you're like, oof, this smells so good. So pick that thing. And when you're inhaling, I want you to imagine that you're inhaling that very nice smelling thing that you like. And when you're exhaling, I want you to imagine a candle, a lit candle. And when you blow out and imagine that you're blowing out a candle. So that's choice number 1. Visualize a nice smelling thing when you're inhaling. When you're exhaling, imagine you're blowing out a candle. The second choice is to bring all your attention to your abdominal area. And when you're breathing in, notice how your abdomen pushes out. And when you're breathing out, notice how your abdomen contracts, moves inside. It's almost like your belly button is trying to touch your spine. And so pick one of those 2 choices. And so I'll begin the breathing exercise. And it's a counting technique from 1 to 10. When you inhale, count 1. When you exhale, count 2, until we arrive to 10. We'll do the first round guided. Then the second round, you'll do it by yourself. And then we'll continue with the session. So let's go. Breathe in. 1, breathe out. 2, breathe in. 3, breathe out. 4, breathe in. 5, 6, 7, breathe out. 8, last 2, breathe in. Breathe out. 10. Start again on your own. Breathe in. 1, 2 more breaths. Now, I'd like to invite you to start to bring your attention back into your body. Begin with your feet on the ground. How are they feeling? What's their temperature? Think about your hands. Where are your hands placed? Come to your sense of taste. What are you tasting on your tongue? Sense of smell. What are you hearing? And then finally, open your eyes. What can you see? Ooh, thank you for participating in that. You can tell me in the chat box, how are you feeling? Personally, I'm feeling calmer. Thank you. I can even sense from just the Nini, this is a, I don't know, there's a sense of relaxation. So just tell me how you're feeling as we continue with the session. So I'd like to, sorry, let me just move this. Let me see, someone is chatting me. Agnes, lost audio, not able to follow the exercise, kindly guide. Yes, we'll do it again. Agnes, don't worry. This is how we are taking our health breaks today. So we'll do it again and I'll guide you in the second round. Thank you. So yeah, you can just let me know how you're feeling up until this point. And so let's check into the next concept, which is stigma. So let's see, someone on the chat, Prieto was amazing. Yes, feeling so relaxed. That was amazing. Starting to feel sleepy. Effective breath work. You feel so relaxed and calm down. You want to sleep. So this is a tool that I would really encourage you to take with you after this session, and just like will recognize you can do it internally. Nobody needs to know. So you're just you and your breathing exercise. But the idea is to just help you calm down, to relax, take a step back from everything that is going on. So when it comes to stigma, the work that we do has a double-edged stigma. So one, you're working in the juvenile justice system. And I can't really speak to the rest of Africa, but I would, infer, but from Kenya, if you're in the crossfires or in conflict with the law, there's just a stigma that is attached to you. You are viewed as somebody who is not you're not in line with society, and people almost have a disdain towards you. And then you're a person who's working in that system. So how do people perceive you based on you working in the juvenile justice system? And then now on top of that, the second level of stigma comes in, where as workers who work in spaces that require very high levels of care, and just, of course, our mental health care is drained. Yeah, Washira is saying, sorry, I felt some relaxation on my shoulders, sensed some little soothing somewhere on my shoulders. Brilliant. We hold on to a lot of tension in our shoulders and our back, our hips. So yes, effective. Julian at Agnes will share the exercise with you after the session. For sure, we definitely will. So yeah, so when then it comes to stigma, then again, because you're in the profession that you're in, there's the expectation that you should know, right? You should know. I mean, you're working in legal. I mean, you've read. I mean, so you should know. So a lot of us do shy away from actually opening up and saying, by the way, this work that I do is intensely heavy. By the way, this work that I do is burning me out. There's an expectation from everybody that, I mean, you're in the legal service. Aren't you not top tier? Aren't you not pedestalized in your communities? Like, you should know. We expect that you should know. And so what stigma starts to do is that, number one, Yvonne had mentioned it earlier, where shame is an emotion that we carry so heavily. Sometimes it's invisible. We're unable to see, the shame. And so stigma, when people say something is stigmatized, it's because they think that it's something that you should be ashamed of. It's something that has a shame attached to it. And so even as mental health care workers, you'll find that you may not necessarily seek our professional help, because what you tell yourself is, if anybody knows that I'm seeking out Yvonne's services, if anybody knows I'm seeking out Warenga's services or Nimo's services, what will they say about me? And so shame tends to propel a lot of how we interact with mental health care, how we admit to ourselves that, by the way, I think that I'm burning out. By the way, I think that we'll introduce a concept known as compassion fatigue. I don't think I'm okay. I still love my work, but I'm needing time out. I'm needing a break. I'm needing probably to do something else and come back to it. And so stigma falls in several categories, as you can see in this slide. So people who are stigmatized, so anticipated stigma is what I've just talked about, where because of your profession, people are already perceive you a certain way. Internalized stigma is the thing you tell yourself about yourself because of the profession that you're in. Yeah, so what is that internalized messaging that you have about yourself? Experienced stigma is now discrimination as a result of the work that you do. So either people don't come around you, people don't hang out with you, people don't talk about what you do loudly, even you yourself, depending on where you're at, you'd rather not people know what you do, right? So that's experienced stigma. A lot of sources of this stigma are community over here now, just, the legal environment, structures and systems around how we work. And so that's now, is your system supporting you, or is it increasing to the stigma? And then different laws and policies, country laws, but also organizational policies that could keep you in a state of being stigmatized. And a lot of the times, the sources of stigma, what they are doing is enacting that stigma. So you feel discriminated because, yeah. Now, how we move away from negative attitudes and prejudice is pretty much through what we are doing today, an information or an education session. So remember that mental health is a skill. Learning how to take care of your mental health, learning how to manage yourself, picking up self-care practices, it's a skill. The same way, like when you realize that probably you have too much month at the end of your money, and when you think about yourself, you're just like, hey, I really don't know how to budget. What do you then go and do? You go pick up, either you read or you join a course that teaches you money management. Right? I'll speak here for the Kenyan education system. There are things that were just left out of the system altogether: mental health education, sex education, and financial education. And then once you're an adult, you start to realize that, wait, I was in a maths class, but nobody taught me how to budget. I was in a biology and a science class, but nobody taught me about my brain. Nobody taught me about it. So it's not that I was not there. It's not that I did not receive this education. It's just that the education was not geared towards your lived reality, which is now, after you're done with the schooling system, when you're living real life, how does maths, A plus B plus C equals Z, how does that then translate into my lived reality? And so again, if any of you in the education system, I'm a big champion for this, for education systems to begin to adapt to our lived realities, so that it sets you up for success as an adult, as a functioning adult, right? So again, you can, part of how you can destigmatize the process is, having contact with people who are actually affected so that you can see their lived realities. For you, it's with children. So imagine if, sat down and had the patience to ask this child about their life story. Put yourself in their shoes and imagine what it would look like for them to arrive in the juvenile justice system. What happened to them before they arrived here? And then think about yourself, because at the end of the day, you may be an adult, but you're somebody's child. You're somebody's child, even the child of the community, you're our child. And so think about yourself and wonder, wow, I wonder if these things happened to me, what would I do? Empathy, right? And then also being a change agent. This pretty much means that you recognize that because of the stigma that in the workplace that I exist in, then there's something I can do from me as an individual before we check into the structure and the systemic problems. What can I do as an individual to change and shift how I treat children, to change and shift the services to being child friendly? What can I do in my own individual capacity? right? And then again, if you have access to people who are opinion leaders, like I've just said, in the education system, in the health system, in the legal system, you know, implore them to begin to look at how stigma is affecting the industry, and then put in things that can be able to support us as we continue to do our work, right? Again, here, especially when it's for you who's stigmatized individually, counseling is an absolutely beautiful tool that you can use. What, you know, Nimo and Yvonne do as their day-to-day work, go for counseling, go for therapy. It works. I can tell you, it works. Again, skills building. What we are doing here today is another example of you building your skill set on mental health, your skill set on wellness. So it's really, really important that you consistently in the quest to build the skill. Remember that mental health care is lifelong work. It's not an event. It's not dramatic. It can be very mundane, by the way. But the idea here is continuing to build skills of taking care of yourself, skills of prioritizing yourself, skills of learning emotional intelligence, learning how to identify your emotions and name your emotions. All those are skills, they can be learned. Part of what, like, now the work that we do at the Center for Mental Health and Wellness is that building your skills around your mental health, building your skills around your emotional health, and giving you the capacity to articulate and express yourself, and to notice things before they come to a point of crisis, right? We work for prevention over cure. And so we give you the tools to notice it. And so that by the time it's now happening, you're able to be like, this is what is actually happening to me. And then finally, just being empowered. As we were discussing how to structure today's webinar, you know, Nimo and I suggested that we go with the empowerment angle. We go with the angle for recognizing that the work you do is heavy. The work you do is really, really intense. And nobody is coming to hold your hand and support you, to show you how to do your work better. And so that's pretty much why we are taking the angle that we are taking for for using mental health as an education tool, and to talk to you as the human being that's your lived reality, and to give you tools to be able to, first of all, as an individual, take care of yourself, so that by the time you're delivering the service to the child, you've given yourself. So now when you give the child, it's coming from a place of fullness and wholeness. So as I'm resting my voice, I'd really like to invite Nimo to introduce herself. Yes, Jane, we will share the counselor's number and organization name. We'll also share these slides, and our contact information is on the last page. So for sure, we're definitely going to share this with you, don't worry. So yes, Nimo, please introduce yourself.
Hi, Waringa. Hi, everyone else. Pauline, sorry I was late, dealing with something else in my other life. So I'm glad to be here. Waringa, if you can help me with the slides, if you can continue with your slide, if you can put it onto the next one, onto the trauma.
Okay.
I was actually planning a very interactive session, but I came on and found everyone's camera is off. So I've very quickly changed my mind to I shall just drone on, and I hope you don't fall asleep, especially after Waringa's breathing exercises. So, and I must say, Waringa, when you're saying inhale and think about, kind of what the smells are, my dog is here and he had just at that point farted. So I was smiling quietly by myself thinking, I don't think this is what is meant to be happening. But as I sorry. So, Paula, so trauma. What is trauma? It is said that about 59% of people have suffered some sort of trauma, if not more. There are different types of trauma. There's acute, and as it says this is a result from a single stressful or dangerous event. And an example of that would be a car accident. Maybe you are the violent robbery, you are on the receiving end of a violent robbery. So stuff like that. So a one-off thing that has really shaken you to your core. Then we've got what is known as chronic trauma. This results from repeated and prolonged exposure to highly stressful events. So we're talking about things like domestic abuse. We're talking about things like child abuse. We're also talking about things like bullying. And this could be bullying in school, in the workplace, it could be bullying anywhere. It's especially with bullying, you know, if I talk about something that's known as a negative core belief. So for example, as a child, you've constantly been bullied, whether by parents or your carers. You know, you're constantly being told you're stupid, you're constantly being told, you know, you're worthless. You develop rules and assumptions to guard yourself from these opinions. And I'll call them opinions because most of the time they're not truths. But as a child, you don't know, you know, because you're too young, you don't know how to reason with yourself and come to the conclusion that actually, no, this is someone's opinion. You actually take it as truth. So you develop what's known as a negative core belief. And the negative core belief then is, you know, for someone who's been called stupid all their life, they start actually believing they're stupid. So what they then do is develop a system for themselves where they say, you know, to hide this stupidity, I must do everything perfectly. Now, I'm here to tell you there's nothing, perfect is a word we use, but there's nothing like perfect. My perfect is not your perfect. There's nothing like perfection. We all have different standards of perfection. Plus also trying to chase perfection can be a very difficult thing. So the reason I'm saying this is, imagine, especially the those of you who work, you know, in the juvenile systems, in the prisons with young people, imagine a child like this coming to you. They've already got this negative belief, core belief, that they're dealing with, and come to this place where they then hear maybe someone saying the same thing to them. What will their behavior be? Will it be positive or will it be unhelpful? Which then in turn, if you've got, you know, you've suffered the same kind of thing, you might then start, your behavior might also be negative towards this child because you've got this thing that you haven't dealt with. We then move on to the complex trauma, and complex trauma is a result from exposure to multiple traumatic events. So think about ongoing physical and emotional abuse, things like chronic neglect, abandonment. Medical trauma can also be included in here. Torture, things like being held captive, children taking on adult roles. And by this, I mean, you know, there are many instances, and it could be due to a variety of factors, where a 9-year-old has probably been left at home with their siblings, and they're the ones who are to look after that sibling. Of course, this is not healthy. They're the ones who are having to do the cooking. They're the ones who are having to, and it comes to the point where they're also having to do the discipline, whatever discipline looks like in that home. So these kind of things can develop, you know, thing that's known as complex trauma. We then have what is known as vicarious trauma. Now, this is an indirect exposure to a traumatic event through first-hand account or narrative of an event. So think about things like symptoms will include things like bystander guilt, shame. So people who've been, say, in an accident where maybe they were the ones driving, everyone else maybe in the car has passed on, and they're the only ones who did not. These kind of things, you know, kind of like survivor's guilt. That would be called survivor's guilt. So these kind of things can really, really affect someone's mental health. And if you're not aware enough to catch it, can then come out in very unhelpful behavior. So like Waringa had mentioned before, being very mindful, being very aware of where you are as a person. And one of the things, like Waringa said, is bringing back, we always have our breath. Unless we're dead, we will always be breathing. One of the things I say to myself is my breath is my anchor. So anytime I need to come back to my breath, I need to remember that this is the thing that's going to calm me down, like Waringa was saying, or it can heat me up. So different types of breathing do different types of things. When you're angry and you're hyperventilating, the more you hyperventilate, the angrier you become. So the opposite effect would be, okay, I'm starting to feel this anger, and knowing your body. So I know when I start getting angry, my heart starts racing. I get this kabuzz in my head. So then I know I need to come back to my breath. I need to calm down. So it's really important to know, you know, how your body behaves, how you behave in different circumstances. What is it I feel when I'm feeling sad? What is, and being very aware the difference between anxiety, the difference between sadness, the difference between anger, because sometimes these things can actually look alike, and being able to tell the difference between them will help you better deal with whatever the situation is. Now we then move on to what's known as post-traumatic stress. Experience, you know, kind of examples of where post-traumatic stress can arise from. Things like domestic or dating violence. So you're in a relationship where you're constantly walking on eggshells. You don't know what is going to happen when the person comes in. And I'm talking about both men and women. I think we tend to forget that women can also be quite violent towards their partners. But this also happens, and it's even worse, I think, for men, because there is, again, we go back to the word stigma that is attached to it. So it's embarrassing to seek help. You know, you go and talk to your boys. Where is that? Your woman is sitting on you. You're under the thumb. So they find, you know, men will find it a bit harder. But it is so important to be aware of these things, so then you're able to deal with them. And so we go back to the being aware of your body, being very mindful of how you operate, of your thoughts, of your feelings, of your behavior, being very mindful of them. Warenga, if you can go on to the next slide, tafadhali.
Can you see it?
Yes, workplace trauma symptoms. So here we've got the workplace trauma symptoms, which are things to be very aware of, and this kind of symptoms you'll be feeling. So for example, the physical reactions include things like fatigue, frequent headaches that you're not, you know, you've drank enough water during the day, and there's still this headache kind of somewhere bothering you, or dizziness that can't be explained. Sometimes these things can manifest in aches and pains. And when you think back, you're thinking, well, I haven't knocked myself, I didn't fall down, but where is this pain coming from? Appetite changes, not having an appetite or eating a lot, which is known as comfort eating. These are the things to kind of keep an eye out for. You've also got emotional reactions, which are part of the symptoms. So just being irritable. So, you know, whereas normally someone would come and, you know, say good morning to you, and you'd be quite happy to say good morning back. But on this particular, you know, of late, you snap back a very irritated good morning, or angry outbursts where you're wondering, you know, where has that come from? Why did I react in that way? Normally, I wouldn't have reacted that way, but why is it I'm just so angry all of a sudden? Feeling anxiety, feeling helpless, being moody, whereas normally you're not a moody person, and frustration from everything, frustration of your job, frustration at home, frustration, just feeling frustration and not being able to try and to know where this, you know, this frustration has come from. You've also got the negative effects on thoughts. So not being able to concentrate on a task, confusion. Have I done it? What have I read? You know, those times when you read, you know, you're trying to study or you're trying to read a book or whatever, and you read a sentence 10 times and you're wondering, why is it that why am I not understanding this sentence and other it's maybe a 10-word sentence, but it's just not happening. You're just not understanding it. Then you've got mental block. Negative thinking. Negative thinking is a big one. Again, we go back to the I am useless, or I am not worthy, I am unlovable. These things that are not helpful to think of, because once you start thinking things like that, they descend further. It doesn't stop there. It keeps moving. And what we then do is look for instances where we, you know, during our day-to-day basis, we're going to only be aware of the instances where I have been bad, where I've been unloved. So you're not actually looking at anything else. You're finding those small instances, which then prove to you, yeah, actually, I am bad, which then again, now we'll leak into the irritability or the angry outburst. So all these things are linked together. You know, our thoughts, our feelings, and behavior are very, very linked, absolutely linked. Once you work on one, then there's that effect where there'll be a knock-on effect on the other two. And then there's forgetfulness. So whereas normally you remember stuff, all of a sudden you're forgetting small things, you know, where did I put the keys? And it's not old age, so that we remove the things that we think it is. So remove pregnancy, remove old age, so literally you're a young, healthy person who all of a sudden starts forgetting. Then you've got the behavioral reactions, which include, again, poor sleep, whether it's not sleeping or sleeping too much. So whereas normally a person who wakes up at 5 a.m. and is active from then, you're finding that at that 5 a.m. you're not able to wake up. So now you're waking up at 7 or 8, which again will then have an effect on you. Again, they're all linked. If I'm tired, I'm going to be irritable. I'm going to be moody. All these things are linked. Then there's the isolating of yourself. So, you know, so at the end of the day, maybe you decide, you know, your colleagues decide, let's go have dinner, or let's go for one drink before we leave. You don't want to do that. You're avoiding family, you're avoiding friends, you're avoiding just constant avoiding of things, and avoiding things at work as well. So duties. You know, so you've been asked to do something, and you know, kind of in your head, because of the anxiety that you're feeling, you feel that you're not able to cope with that duty. So you find all ways to avoid. I'm feeling sick. I had a bad curry yesterday. My stomach is bad. So that kind of thing. And then, like Waringa mentioned earlier, the increased use of alcohol and drugs. So whereas normally you've been Taska moja or one beer, you're now having 4 Taskas, or you've now moved into harder spirits and, you know, something that will get you drunk quicker, cheaper, and then using drugs. So, you know, things like cocaine, heroin, you know, all these drugs that are out there to cope. And all these things that especially the alcohol and the drugs, a lot of the time people think it's a coping mechanism, but it is an unhealthy. You may be coping, but what is coming with that is very unhelpful. So then, if we move on to the next slide, or Ingata Fadhali.
As we move on to the next slide, Washira has contributed on the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, and the contribution is many of the children in the justice system have suffered various forms of trauma. And as I come to think of it, involvement in and interaction with the justice system further causes the traumatic experiences and worsen their situation.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things, you know, we were discussing with Waringa, and we're saying, you know, children don't wake up bad. It's not one day they wake up and they decide, from here today, I'm going to steal, or I'm going to be a bully, or that's not how it happens. It's a process. And like I'm saying, it could be a process where they're hearing negative things constantly. They're being neglected at home. They're not getting praise. They're not being, there's no affection. There's no, you know, a child like that will learn, and will learn from a child's point of view, and not thinking like an adult, how to handle that kind of thing. And then they land into the justice system. So they've got these behavioral issues where if one is not aware of them, they're labeled bad, or they're labeled evil, or they're labeled, they've got demons in them, or whatever labels that are being put on them, without actually asking oneself, why is this child behaving in this way? Why is this child reacting in this way? There's always a cause. There's always a cause. So it's really important, again, and to be able to catch that, you have to be in a place where you are good with yourself, so that you're not then, again, re-traumatizing the child with whatever it is they've been through. We then come on to compassion, fatigue, and burnout. Now, they're two very different things. So compassion fatigue describes the impact of helping others, while burnout is a term that describes the impact of stress, of a stressful workplace. So two very different things. One is about a stressful workplace, the other one is the impact of helping others. So careers like in
Sorry. Hello? Hey, Nemo, is it just me? Your sound is affected. Hello?
Yes, Nemo's audio is affected.
Care homes, that kind of thing is where you'll find things like, sorry, yeah?
Anyway, your audio was affected.
So,
there
can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry, you can, okay, so Paul, I'm not sure where it stopped working or where it started bringing issues, but I'll just continue and read what's on the slide. So on here it says, the compassion fatigue is the emotional residue or strain of exposure to working with those suffering from consequences of traumatic events. I put it to you that a lot of you who are working in the juvenile system are very, this can happen. You do work with people who have experienced traumatic events, and maybe not one. It could be continuous. Think about what we spoke about, the trauma, what types of trauma there is. So then there's the danger of compassion fatigue happening. This is where, again, the looking after yourself comes in. This is where, again, the breathing. Where am I today? Being very mindful of, okay, so where am I at this point in the day? Has my mood changed? Am I feeling, has something happened that has made me feel angry? Has something happened? But being very aware of where you are in yourself. And then burnout, like I explained, is the impact of a stressful workplace. So there's a very big difference between the two. So if you go on to the next slide.
I think the next slide is on compassion fatigue, but before that, I'd like us to take a health break to just digest that.
Okay.
Also, as I'm reading out Mutiso's comment on the chat, also, hi Mutiso, we have worked in other sectors. We've intersected in other areas. So good morning. Good morning to you, Mutiso. So his contribution is an inmate, that is a person confined to an institution such as a prison or a hospital. The relationship between mental health, trauma, which is also like adverse childhood experiences, and crime is like two sides of the same coin. If we addressed adverse childhood experiences, we will reduce our prison population by 80%. Facts. I agree. I absolutely agree. And so also, as we are checking into doing our breathing exercise to just, pace ourselves. We've said quite a number of things leading up to this point. So let's, just do the breathing exercise. We'll do one round. Also, Agnes here, I really hope that you're able to hear us so that you can be able to pick up the instructions. But otherwise, let's breathe and then we jump into compassion fatigue. Juvenile trauma comes in many forms. Can the unresolved trauma lead to complete brain damage? Nemo, would you like to take that up?
Sorry, I missed that. I'd had to step away a bit from the Nini. Sorry, what had you said?
Okay. So there's a question that is being asked. Trauma comes in many forms. Yeah. Can the unresolved trauma lead to complete brain damage?
To brain damage, really? And brain damage in what way? So like a stroke, or what do you mean by what brain damage in what way?
Juvenile, kindly elaborate for us so that we are able to answer your question comprehensively. Like, what do you mean by brain damage, or just complete brain damage? But for sure, I can add and say unresolved trauma has serious effects everywhere. So in your personal life, your family life, community, your work life, and it actually dictates how you behave. So the point is to bring it to your awareness, to bring it to your consciousness. Otherwise, if it's happening invisibly, then it's just directing the way you're behaving, and almost like a puppet master, and you're the puppet. And so when you're going to therapy, when you're going to counseling, when you're building your emotional intelligence skills, your mental health skills, ideally what you're trying to do is not only bring that trauma to your consciousness, but also have skills to support you as you process it. Yeah, in the event that you're triggered. So Juvenile, just tell us a little bit more about your question, then we'll be able to answer it. Agnes, I'm happy to hear that you can hear us. Good. So I think as we'll jump into Juvenile's question shortly. But what I'd like us to do again is a breathing exercise. So this time it will be a lot faster. Remember, release anything that you're holding on and cross your arms and your legs. If your arms are crossed or your legs are crossed, uncross them. And again, start with your eyes. Look around, note what you're seeing, and then close your eyes. Come to your hearing. What can you hear around you, including the sound of my voice? Note it. Move to your sense of smell. What are you smelling around you? What are you tasting? Think about your hands. Where are they placed? What can you touch? What are you feeling? And also, what's the temperature of your hands and your fingers? Bring your attention to your feet on the ground. How are your feet feeling? What's the temperature of your feet? If you've worn shoes, how are you feeling? You're stepping on the ground. Just note that. And then bring your attention to your visualization aid of choice. So either the very nice smelling thing that you like and a candle, or bring all your attention to your abdominal area. Note that as you inhale, your abdominal area pushes out. As you exhale, your abdominal area moves back in. It's almost like your belly button is trying to touch your spine. And so we'll begin the breathing technique. And so let's start 1, inhale. 2, exhale. 3, 4, exhale. 5, 6, inhale. 2 more breaths, inhale. Exhale 10. Next round, do it alone. Inhale, start from 1 again. Two more breaths. Exhale. Bring your attention back into your body. Start with the feet on the ground. Think about your hands. Come to your tongue. What are you tasting? What can you smell around you? What can you hear? And finally, open your eyes. What can you see? Ooh. Great, great, great. Thank you. Thank you so far. Thank you for your attention, for being, plugged in. I really hope that this is not only helping you identify what's going on with yourself, but also as a professional, what probably has been happening leading up to this point. And it's definitely our hope that this information is helping you. So I'll pick up from Nimo and just take you down a trip known as the stages of compassion fatigue. So what you
Warenga, sorry, just before I just wanted to answer
yes.
the question. The brain kind of the trauma can cause lifelong damage. So, it depends on the kind of trauma. You've got the trauma where you've had an accident and your brain is injured. So there's that kind of trauma, but also things like PTSD. It does affect the way your brain works. It affects different parts of the brain, and these are areas that play a part in regulating our emotions and responding, how we respond to fear. So it can therefore cause lifelong brain damage, which would be different from the accident kind of brain damage. But yes, it can. And this is why it's so important to seek help early before it becomes chronic. And again, we go back to the mindfulness. This is why it's so important to be mindful of where you are, where your thoughts are, where your feelings are. It all comes back to full circle to that. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. So in the remaining minutes, we are almost done. This is the second last part of our webinar today. So just continue remaining present, plugged in. Remember that you can have a beverage of your choice. Yes, also noting that it's in the morning, so the beverages that I am suggesting. Remember that you can continue to breathe even as the webinar is going on. And so, as Nimo has elaborated in the previous slides, there's a difference between burnout and compassion fatigue. But what we want to emphasize on is compassion fatigue because of the industry that you work in. So it's a caring industry, which pretty much means that the work that you do requires that you are giving of yourself from the place of care, attention, empathy, being sensitive and in tune with other people and what's going on with them, being expected to, hold space for a child who is in distress, be patient through it all. And I think that we are consistently forgetting is that energy is a very finite resource. You do not have copious amounts of energy. And so over time, remember, we talked about on this slide, the types of trauma, right? Outside of acute trauma, which Nimo has talked about, it's sudden, it's immediate, you literally almost did not see it coming. And that's why, something like an accident, or like you're in a building and then there's a terror attack, or you're, walking in town and your bag is grabbed and you're mugged, it's acute. Acuteness means it's immediate, right? The thing with compassion fatigue, it falls mostly in chronic, complex, vicarious trauma and post-traumatic stress. So it can touch on all of those in different varying degrees, right? And so the thing I need you to remember is that this thing takes time. And so that's why in the first stage of compassion fatigue is something known as the zealot phase. So here, if you remember yourself, if you take yourself back to the first time, probably you ever thought about working in this industry, when you joined work, you had enthusiasm, you had energy, you were committed, you were, filled with ideas, you put in extra hours, everywhere you go, you talk about your work with pride, your mind is consistently thinking about how can I improve, the lived realities of my clients. There's energy, and you're happy and you're elated and you're happy, you're energetic, right? And that this is where it begins. And again, remember that these stages can take the time that they take. The idea here is to just note and try and place yourself where you're at. Then the enthusiasm starts to move slowly into the irritability phase. So here you are, cutting corners. Sorry, let me read something that Juvenile has. Please, Aki, please tell me if I'm butchering your name. I really hope not. And I'm sorry about that if I'm mispronouncing your name. So here in my country, we see people who are foolish, and some of the explanations that we get are they've been traumatized to an extent that they have become foolish. I do not really believe it. In which circumstances could this happen? Okay, Nimo, would you like to jump into that? But I'm seeing what you're saying. Like, as in trauma, compounded trauma over time. Is your mic muted? I think your mic is muted.
It is. So now I'm just looking at it. Here in my country, we see people who are foolish. Again, foolish me. I'm sorry. Because I want to answer the question correctly. When you say foolish, what do you mean? Are you connecting it with mental health issues, or if you can expound a bit more on the word foolish?
Okay. I think as that is happening, we can be continuing. Yeah. So I think another thing also you notice when it comes to questions around mental health, just generally for everybody, is that specificity is required. For me to give you an answer that is suiting your lived reality, the more specific you get about what is going on, the better placed. Now, professionals like Nimo and I and Yvonne, I don't know if Yvonne is still on the call, the better placed we are to then give you an answer that makes sense for your lived reality, right? So what are the stages? So you've moved from enthusiasm to just irritability. I think we've all experienced a form of irritability, and so here, you're just, I would say, moodless. You could be responding to people with sarcasm. At this point, remember, like when you began, you were committed, you were plugged, you were switched on. Now you're probably cutting corners. You've come to work, literally you just mark register. You've been seen as a physical body, not necessarily too interested in anything that is going on. You're beginning to avoid, over here, patients could also be children. You're avoiding your co-workers. So there's avoidance, there's isolation. Any moment that you could get to not be around them, you'll take it. And then also there's a lot of daydreaming here. What if I worked somewhere else? What if my work environment was different? What if these children, again, did not have so much going on? As in also, like, you start feeling a little bit resentful about all of the intricacies and layers that these children come with when they are in the juvenile system. Yes, Nimo, he's saying it's connected to mental health. So do you want to jump in and answer? I think you're muted.
So I'll just read it again. Here in my country, we see people who are foolish, and some of the explanations we get are that they have been traumatized to an extent that they become absolutely trauma can lead to mental health issues, like we've just been saying with post-traumatic stress affected. It really is affected. So it can lead to what you call foolishness. Although I would ask not to use the word foolish when it's coming to mental health, but actually using the word, would someone suffer from a mental health issue? Is I think the more, I think they say politically correct term would be what, but yes, it can happen that this trauma can lead to mental health issues. Yeah. I hope I've answered your question.
Hopefully, if not, we can just continue to engage. So when you've moved from now the irritability phase, you now move into withdrawal. So again, you can see that it's connected. So already in the disability phase, you've already started to avoid people. Now you're just withdrawn. And then here it's now a withdrawal from the self. So first of all, you're neglecting either your family and your other many lives, and where your life intersects with so many other roles that you play. You're neglecting that. You're neglecting yourself. So remember here, actually, like if you're able to place yourself here, a lot of these workplace symptoms start to show up, where you're neglecting yourself, you're not really taking care of yourself physically, you are, feeling just fatigue, headachy, your stomach is paining, like you're just not feeling like yourself. And so also you could contribute and tell us if throughout this session, if you're being able to place yourself here. This is a safe space, there's absolutely no judgment. And yeah, everything you say will be used for you and to help you, not against you. Yeah, so this phase, that's what that starts to show up. Let's see someone on the chat. Okay, so Nemo, that's good. Again, you start to neglect your client here, who's the child. Your workmates and your clients actually become irritants. So remember, irritability phase, it's just irritating you, like you don't want to be around them. You feel exhausted. When even before somebody speaks, you're like, I'm already tired. I'd rather be anywhere else. I'd rather be anywhere else doing anything else. This is that fatigue now checking in. And that's why compassion fatigue is very different from the normal fatigue. It's because I want you to start to note here that, first of all, it's really coming after your physical, mental, and emotion, right? So it's just not only the fatigue, which we know, which is your physical body is tired. And then if you did something like napped or took a break, you're rejuvenated. No, here it's really coming after your capacity to function generally, right? And then we move to the zombie phase. So here, like if you've watched any movie, cartoon, animation with zombies, really it's that's what we are trying to see. Here where like you're operating almost like you're just like a robot. You're a robot, I'll just do as you're saying I need you to do. You're not really contributing much. At this point, that enthusiasm went. People around you might actually even be just describing you as, you remember when Warenga came to work here? Hey, Warenga has really changed. Or, me, I don't know, the first few years of Warenga working here, things used to move. Now, I don't know. A lot of the time, just be like, I don't know. Because a lot of us don't have the language. It's just like something has changed. And then now you see, because this person is avoiding you, you're also avoiding them. And sometimes that becomes a very dangerous cycle of not intervening, because as opposed to that moment, it hitting you. Wait, when Warenga came here a few months ago or a few years ago, her behavior was like this, and then now it's on this other extreme, coming to ask or raising an alarm to somebody who would help. Is there anything going on? What tends to happen is that then now you withdraw even further, and that withdrawing then, as in, it's not helping anybody. And so here again, in the zombie phase, now what little compassion you have has completely left. You have very little patience. So you're snappy, you're angry, you snap really quickly, your patience is very thin and worn out. You're on autopilot, that thing for like, let me just come. If you're working online, let me just log on to this call and do other things. Then now here again, you have like disdain. You have disdain for the children, you have disdain for your co-workers, you have disdain for the industry, you're resentful, you don't like anything, and then it's showing up everywhere. So even sometimes randomly you could be listening to the news and something around the legal system or the juvenile system is mentioned, or even now generally around children is mentioned, and you have disdain for them. Remember, I think a very powerful lesson I learned early on in my life is everywhere you go, there you are. That then means that there's no such thing as Warenga wakazi, and then Warenga wa family, or Warenga for work, Warenga for family, Warenga with her friends. No, everywhere you go, there you are. So in this phase, especially between the withdrawal and the zombie phase, if you have children, you're highly likely treating them with disdain. Your family members are receiving the wrath of your exhaustion. Animals, all these stray animals and cats and dogs that we see, goats and sheep, Remember, we are African children, right? We may be living in urban blocks, but we have our domestic animals. You're the kind of person who will come and kick the animal, throw stones. You're angry, like you will pick fights. Sometimes, like, what, depending on how your public transport system is set up, this is the time you're going to pick fights with the conductor, pick fights with the person who's sitting next to you. Remember, this is also very emotional. So you're not feeling okay, and you're just needing that not okayness to leave you. And because now you're also operating with very low emotional intelligence, you're not understanding, first of all, what's going on with you, where you're at in these stages. All you know is that you're irritated, annoyed, and you want things to end. So again, remember here, even with the zombie phase, you might be finding yourself starting to have suicidal ideation, thinking that I want to die, imagining how it would look like if you died, imagine how it would look like if you just woke up one day and the rapture came, but only specifically for the juvenile justice system. As in, it sounds intense, but that's your thoughts, your thinking. Remember, mental, your thinking mind exists in the mental space. And so you're thinking negative thought patterns, thinking badly of everybody. Julian is asking, can compassion fatigue lead to narcissistic traits? I don't know what comes first here, chicken or egg. I don't know whether you are just actually a narcissist and then now you're a narcissist with compassion fatigue, or you have compassion fatigue and then it brings about narcissism. Nemo, help me.
I'm smiling because absolutely, chicken and egg. Which one comes first? Yeah, it's very difficult to actually to pinpoint and say, yeah, this one became a narcissist because of this. But let me just read that question properly. Compassion fatigue. Okay, no, trauma can lead to huge changes in one's personality, really huge changes because of the brain damage or the injury caused to the brain. But compassion fatigue, that one, I'd need to actually check that one up before I give a definite answer. But I think it's like Waringa says, the chicken and the egg. It would be hard to distinguish which comes first.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much for that. Also, in this stage of just like operating on zombie mode, you'll find yourself also like you're operating in a silo, right? It's just, this is my work. I'm doing my part. I'm doing like you become very like, you don't want to interact with people too much. And that's what I'm saying, that then when you observe how you're behaving at home, when you observe how you're behaving in community, it's highly likely the same thing through and through. It's just that a lot of the times, our work lives do not intersect with the rest of our lives. So probably, if I talk to your family member, it would be like, oh my God, even at home, they're behaving like that. Then we need to intervene, right? But because these worlds are kept separate, also for purposes of just professionalism, employment, like we can't be cross-purposing this information because of it being misused. But ideally, the thing that I'm needing you to note in yourself is that it's rare, actually almost impossible, that you're being affected at work and then it's not showing up everywhere else. And that's why, like, especially then when it comes to your support systems, if you can have a well-rounded support system structure that allows for, you have people at work who are just not workmates, they also are friends. That's a really big benefit. And so because then you hang out with them outside of the work environment, then they can see how you're behaving outside of work and bring it to your attention that there could be something that is missing for you. Washira is saying, this really explains a lot. At times when you see professionals who are numb and disconnected to the situations that children are going through, they are in one of the stages of compassion fatigue, fully. And remember, as human beings, a human being has been built to be functional, to be sensitive, to be plugged in and in tune with themselves and their environment and with others, to live every day thinking about how can I make my community better, livable, habitable, safe. That's, as a human being, when you come on, that's what Nemo was saying. Children are not born bad. We grow into this behavior. So even you remember, as you're seated or standing or whatever position you're in this webinar, you may be in an adult body, but you're somebody's child. So there's something known as, I'll introduce you to the concept of the inner child. So even though you're now in a, your age and your physical body are congruent, you still have an inner child in you. And a lot of the times that inner child is not attended to, then that disdain, on top of that, like you remember that you're feeling disdain. And so some of your negative thinking could be, me when I was this age, I was not behaving like this. Remember, stigma. Me when I was this age, what I was in school, I was working hard, I was passing exams. Where was I coming in conflict with the law? Me when I was this age. So what you're failing to recognize is that you're not being also compassionate with your own inner child. Your empathy is also very finite. It drains. Your empathy levels are, you're completely desensitized. And so also you start to compare your life to this child. Or remember again, if you're in the vicarious trauma, you start to attach, there's again a psychological concept known as attachment. So you start to attach yourself to maybe a specific child and their lived reality, and you're preoccupied with thoughts of that child. You can't think about anything else. You're finding yourself being overly involved compared to any other child that you've come across. You're overly involved, right? This is also now a sign again of vicarious trauma. Because remember, vicarious trauma is not happening to you directly, it's happening to somebody else. And so, but you're picking it up. So either by that child giving you an account, you reading their case file. Again, other ways vicarious trauma shows up is like you're watching something on the news, and you hear a story. So it's not happening to you directly, but because it's happening to somebody else, then it's affecting you. And so remember that again, these stages do take time. They take time. It's very progressive over time. It's an overtime thing. And then finally, maybe you could say the fifth and sixth stage is the pathology versus and victimization stage. So here, and I think Yvonne also alluded to it earlier, where again, if you think through the bias around how we perceive people we think are mentally ill, the question then becomes, is this person mentally ill, or are they just lacking their basic needs? Do they have food? Do they have a safe place to live? Do they have a community that takes care of them, that asks for them, that checks in on them, right? If we met their basic fundamental human needs, do they have clean water? Do they have access to employment? That then if this person got those things, are they mentally ill, or are they just a victim of a society, of a world that is not taking care of them? And so again, depending on how you then look at mental illness, you could fall in the world of pathologizing, and pathology here is making something an illness. So again, remember we talked about this earlier, attaching, not being like, I'm depressed or I'm anxious. I asked Google, and Google told me I have PTSD. So you're pathologizing it, right? You're being victimized by your work. So here you're feeling overwhelmed. You want to quit. A lot of the times you want to quit when you're talking to people, you're just like, I want to leave this work. I want to leave this work. A lot of the times probably what's keeping you there is just the paycheck, but otherwise you have zero interest in working there. Here your sleep may be disturbed. Remember post-traumatic stress. So you're trying to sleep, but your dreams are really vivid. You keep waking up in the middle of the night. If you sleep with somebody in the same bed, they describe your sleep as, maybe you're jumpy, you're restless, and so your sleep is being disturbed, your eating is being disturbed. Also, again over here, like your thinking process, you're not being able to think through things with clarity, in a way that's objective, in a way that your judgment mind, your critic mind, your analytical mind, when it's observing a situation, it's coming to a objective conclusion based on the facts on the ground. A lot of the time here, you'll find that you're probably projecting some other person's lived reality and not yours, and not actually what is going on. So now in this stage, a lot of us get stuck here. And now, like, remember, if nobody was paying attention to you, who is the professional, nobody is really asking questions about what is going on, then a lot of us get stuck here. And so then you start to find that you're working with people who are literally like zombies. people who are so not motivated. And now this again brings about the bigger systemic issue on, is your industry supporting your mental health? Is your industry interested in your wellness as a practitioner? Yeah. Now, what we exist for is to then move you from a place of victimization to a place of renewal and maturation. And this is this stage, which now brings us to the final part of this webinar, right? Emotional intelligence is a whole topic on its own. Kindly reach out to me. That's part of the work that we do. We train you on what it is, how to identify emotions. There's so many tools that we give you, compassionate communication skills. So that's what we do. But for the purposes of this, when you're now like, okay, hey, Warenga, I was not really seeing this webinar go like this. I think you're right. I think I'm somewhere on this spectrum of trauma. I think I'm somewhere in the spectrum of compassion fatigue, or I'm burnt out, right? What do I do? What do I do? So that's what we exist. We help you do. We help you figure out what to do. Sorry about that. Nemo has had to get out of the call again. So hopefully she'll be able to come back, but I'll just letting you guys know. So in this place of self-care, so emotional intelligence in practice is, because this webinar has happened today, because you've been in the position where your capacity, your knowledge has been built and increased, then you recognize to an extent where you're at on the spectrum. So that's part 1A of building emotional intelligence. Part 1B is naming it. Being like Warenga has said quite a number of things, has used quite a number of feeling words, anger, disdain. Also, if you think about it, hatujatumia depression number anxiety hapa. Because remember, by the time you come to a conclusion that you're depressed or have anxiety, you have to see a doctor, and the doctors in our industry are called psychiatrists, right? So here, what you can do for yourself is something known as self-care. So this is very deliberate and intentional care that you give to you, by you. So this is a thing that I really like to demystify. Because of capitalism, consumerism, and I'd actually argue entrepreneurship, self-care has fallen into the world that then we are being convinced that you have to have money and you have to spend money to take care of yourself. There's enterprising human beings out here. I'm also an entrepreneur. And so I understand being able to see a gap and plug it in. But for today, I'm here to demystify that. I want you once again to take a trip down memory lane. You are a child before you became an adult. In your environment, there were adults in your room who worked very hard to make sure that, again, with a very strong staff for ableism, know that you're able to walk and move around on your own. You're able to feed yourself and also hydrate yourself. You're able to clean your body and your environment. You're able to communicate. We could argue about the skills of communication, but at least you're able to verbally express yourself. Again, here, remembering that there's people who their lived realities is that they're not able to express themselves, they can't be able to see, they can't be able to hear, and they can't be able to move around. And so with all due respect, and also to not have this conversation fall in such an ableist place, we do honor their existences as complete, regardless of their ability. And so when then you become an adult, this is bare minimum self-care is, when I woke up, did I make my bed? Did I open the curtains to let air in and open the windows? Did I shower? Did I brush my teeth, wash my face? Did I eat something for breakfast? Did I drink tea? Did I eat bread? That is basic self-care. If you're able to do that, and also like drink water, if you're able for the next, actually let's say towards the end of the year, for this month, at least we're in the first week until the year ends. If you're able every single day, when you wake up, to be conscious about, you're just not waking up and then moving to the next thing and jumping to the next thing and jumping to the next thing. No, to not only wake up and be conscious about and grateful for First of all, I even have a bed that I can make. You know, gratitude. Remember, a lot of us are homeless, not because of our choices. Homelessness is not a choice. Then think about, when was the last time I made my bed? What this is indicating for you is, did you move? Did you move? Because now when you're in mental distress or mental ill health, it affects your capacity to move. So the last time you made your bed was 2 weeks ago. What you need to ask yourself is, where have I been? Have I been inside that bed for 2 weeks straight? It needs to raise an alarm for you. It needs to indicate something. It is not, we will not say it's indicating depression. That's when you go to a doctor. All we are saying is, it needs to bring to your awareness that there's something that is not right with the way I'm operating. Let me see, somebody's in the chat. Yes, Washira, I'm definitely checking the time. This is the last slide, actually. We're almost done. And so again, brushing teeth, hygiene. Is my environment clean? Have I swept, mopped, washed dishes? If you're able to do that for the next 2 months, then you're caring for yourself. But then where we add another level is, now I feed myself. What I can choose is the nutrition in that meal, right? I'm drinking water. What I can then choose is how much water I'm drinking, or even if I want to infuse my water with fruits or what, like that's what you need to pay attention to. If I'm then now moving my body, I moved around. As long as I was cleaning the house, making my bed, showering, whatever, I moved around. So when you're adding a level to it is, do I want to go to the gym? Do I want to run? Do I want to jog? Do I want to do yoga? Do I want to? Now that's where self-care and money come together. That's where, like, a lot of us imagine self-care begins, but it does not begin there. It begins from the most basic. What the adults in your early childhood room did for you to be able to survive as a human being was give you the capacity to feed yourself, move around, drink water, and communicate. Now, based on, if you're able to do those things every day, then you're a person who is self-caring. Then now, if you want to add on other things, then that's where now you can exchange money with different service providers to give you a self-care experience. Yeah, so I really hope that that message has landed home. And then now we also move to the okay. Yeah, we then now move to post-traumatic growth. Remember, we talked about post-traumatic stress, but post-traumatic growth is now recognizing that there's only so much I can do about the way my work environment has affected me. I'm traumatized. But what I have the choice to do is to transform that trauma and use this adversity to my advantage, right? Then you ask yourself, how do I do it? I can, through, first of all, mental and emotional education, build my skill set and my capacity. You can go to then counseling and therapy for a more in-depth one-on-one session with a counselor. And in these sessions, what you're learning to do is to relate with other people again, because remember that this, you're like almost being born anew. So you're then now learning relational skills again, embracing new possibility. Remember, by the time that you're at the point of compassion fatigue, you are like, you're done. You're just like, whatever possibilities there is for whoever to come and deal with it. So embracing new possibilities. You're also regaining your personal strength, confidence in yourself, trusting yourself, right? All of these are skills. I don't want you to leave this place imagining that somehow we woke up like this or somehow it just happens. No, these are skill sets, and that you can, and what I want to encourage you is that you can learn it and you can actively practice it. You can choose to have, spiritual changes, and be a lot more connected with the deities of your choice, and just a general appreciation for life. Also, compassion fatigue really strips away your appreciation for life. Remember that disdain. Remember that you just moodless. You just don't want to, life as you know it just lacks enthusiasm. So what this will help you again is just boost your appreciation for life. And so with that, yeah, thank you, Kuria, for, thank you for the basic basic self-care tips, very basic. Then now, as you're choosing, then now you can go and ask Google. Different types of physical self-care, different types of mental self-care, different types of emotional self-care. It's just different kinds of activities, by the way, and they don't have to be dramatic. The idea is just to recognize that if, for example, you're cooking or you're washing dishes, It's just noting in your mind, by the way, I'm just not washing dishes. By washing these dishes, I am caring for myself and my living environment. Just that, then wash the dishes. As I'm cooking, it's just not cooking to eat, to be full. It's being like, this is nutrition I'm putting into my body. And by eating a nutritious meal, I am caring for my body. That's it, just that mental note in your head. And yeah, and so with that, this has been a very interactive session. Thank you so much. Without going back, I think we've tried as much as possible to have the Q&A and comments as we are going with the session, which I'm very grateful for. Thank you. And so unless there's anything else that is pressing, a question, a comment, a wondering, musings, just also to greet us, we've not heard your voice, please, this is the opportunity to do that. Outside of that, Carol Maringa, thank you so much. Thank you so much. This is when I was telling you earlier about, quality of work versus quantity of work. This is what I pride myself in, being able to deliver an educational service that makes sense for you and the audience I'm speaking to, which is an African and a Kenyan audience. So yes, unless you don't have any questions and comments, I want to leave you with this quote, which especially for the profession that you're in, it could really be sometimes difficult to imagine that you're doing enough. You are enough, you're doing enough. And the idea here is that no matter what gets done or how much is left undone, I am enough. And it's going to bed at night thinking, yes, I am imperfect and vulnerable and sometimes afraid, but that doesn't change the truth that I am also brave and worthy of love and belonging. I'd also really recommend that you look for Brené Brown, fantastic thinker, such an opinion leader in the world of shame and how shame affects how you work and how you operate in life. And so I think for me, as I'd also said earlier, these are our contact details. You can also, thank you so much, Mutiso. You can also reach out to Patrick, Kwashira, or Julian, Duta, Proyeto, and the team, Kevin. Please reach out to them and they will definitely give you our contacts. Like I began by saying, at the Center for Mental Health and Wellness, this is precisely what we do. So if this session was informative for you, imagine doing it in 7 core modules with this amount of detail, with this amount of wellness skills. We work with organizations, we work with school and education systems. And so also if you're sitting here and wondering, how can I bring this into my organization? Reach out to us. What we help you do is integrate mental health care in your already existing working system. Okay, so we won't come and then now be like, there's a mental health thing, and then there's the rest of your work. No, we look at how you're working, and then we infuse mental health care into the way you already work. If you want personalized sessions, if you're here and you're thinking, hey, my family really needs this, reach out to me. Wairimo is psychologist, a child psychologist. So also if you have children and you need them to go for counseling, reach out to her, fantastic work that she does. Yvonne as well, who left the call earlier, but also fantastic counselor. So just also reach out to them. I think for me, as I'm leaving you, I really hope that also you recognize that this is what mental health is. Hatujalia, we've not emotionally burdened each other. We've not, used language like crazy, mad, just derogatory language. No. Here, we are here to educate you, to increase and boost your empathy levels as well. And for you to live knowing that, remember this one, what mental health is. This. Proyeto, thank you. So useful and interesting. And yeah, best things that you can apply these thoughts to every single type. Yes, exactly. Every single type of job. Thank you so much. And so also remember, we are all in a movement. We are all trying to get our mental health in check. And so all of us are here. And so let's support each other as we are trying to realize our potential, as we are trying to cope with our day-to-day stressors. Don't be the stressor. Some of us are not stressed because we are the stressor. Please don't be the stressor. Remember, when you're working productively, you're contributing every day to your community in such big ways. And for me, my work here in this session was to hold space for you, to humanize the work that you do, to humanize you, to appreciate the work that you do. Isi kazi rahisi, or translate, it is not easy work that you're doing. And so with that, I'm extremely grateful. Have a lovely, lovely weekend, towards the weekend. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to continue to work with SCJJ, to work with everybody else who's on this call. So please, please, please reach out and let's make some magic together. Let's make some magic together. But yes, otherwise, asante sana. Bashira, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Wariga. I can't thank you enough, and the other panelists, Wairimo, who was also juggling between a number of things, but yet she managed to find time to be with us, and Yvonne, who also came as a guest panelist. We appreciate so much for what you guys have done this morning, and I think it has been very, very interesting. You have come and you have been able to demystify mental health issues and so on. And in the when we think about it from the context of the juvenile justice, that's why we are trying to bring it closer, because we know very well that people who are working within the sector go through difficult periods, be it family related, be it work related. Yet these are the helpers of the children who are coming into the system. They're offering helping services. And therefore, this topic cannot be discussed enough. And I want to believe that we have just begun. There is still room in which we can talk more about these issues. Thanks for sharing your contacts. But we at the African Council on Juvenile Justice, we are looking into ways in which we can bring topical issues that actually are meaningful to making the child justice in Africa more and more friendly. One of the things, and my takeaway today, is that when we are talking about mental health, we can kind of think that mental health is for those others. It's not for Patrick, it's not for Julian, it's not for Warenga. Mental health is not for me. I'm okay. And quite often, I like the statement that you said before. We actually, hey, how are you doing? Good. You not even twice. You can even say so many goods. Basically, you are trying to emphasize that you are well, but deep down there is something that is not working well. And what we have been able to learn this morning is that mental health is for all of us, for us to be able to be more productive and to be able to give quality services. So I want to thank everyone. I want to thank the participants for being very patient and for being very interactive. I also would like to announce that in regard to the engagements for the African Council, we'll continue engaging. Most probably we'll be able to pick up some of the major events now, maybe coming to the next year. We are looking forward to what new year will unfold for us, because when I talk about New Year, don't get surprised, we are in November. So, and when we cross to December, the year is over. So basically, we'll try to see how much we can be able to engage. I also want to thank Mtoto News team for being very helpful to us. They were the technical people who helped to organize for this webinar. And also for Anita, for Julian from the African Council on Juvenile Justice for making the communications go out. And my team at Chefa, Gabriel, and the entire team for the support that we have received from you. Thank you so much, and we'll continue engaging as the African Council and as practitioners within the sector of juvenile justice. Thank you so much, Wariga, once more.
Thank you, and remember to breathe. Yes, that's your homework. After this call, just do 1 to 10 and then continue with your day. That's your homework.
Thank you. We'll actually be having more purposive breathing. Before you called it automated.
Automated breathing.
Now I think this team will be having more purposeful breathing.
Yes, I hope so too. I hope so too.
Yes,
Asante.
so you can also follow us from the accounts that have been given on the slides, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on LinkedIn. So that is the account for the African Council on Juvenile Justice. Thank you so much, and may God bless you, and may God bless your work wherever you are.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, Anita.
Yes, yes, Patrick.
Yes, and Kevin, and yeah, I think we are the only ones who have remained. How did it go, according to you?
For me, I think it was very good. I really liked the speaker. She was very engaging. And I think she delivered very well, and the way she, what do you call, she involved the other speaker. Yeah, so she didn't feel lost even though she was called upon last minute. Yeah, so I really liked it. I liked the session. Yeah.
Yes, I think it came out well. Kevo?
I think I like the sessions too. They were engaging and quite interactive. Also, the audience were asking the questions.
Yes. I think that was wonderful. Who else? We are the only two here. The only three of us. Julian wasn't feeling very well. Maybe that's why also she left quickly. Yeah, and the others also left. But I think it went on well. Yeah, it's interesting to have seen this discussion going on like that. And I think we are going to pick it up from there. Kevin, probably will catch up on the side.
Fine, we'll catch up on the side.
Yes. Okay. Asante.
So, bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye.